Please, I would kindly ask you for some silence. Thank you. Good morning. I would like to welcome all of you, excellencies, delegations, speakers, moderators, participants, and all friends who came in such high number to participate in this very important event. Welcome to all of you who traveled from far and near. And I really hope that this conference that started with a wonderful event called Connect at Hofburg last night will hopefully get some common understanding on some points relating to Internet and shaping the Internet policies. Before giving the floor to the Chairman of the Permanent Council, Ambassador Ihor Prokopchuk, let me thank Ukraine for supporting the event and for having made media freedom for a third year in a row as one of the priority areas of their chairmanship. Ambassador Prokopchuk, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dunia. Excellencies, distinguished participants, on behalf of the Ukrainian OSCE chairmanship, I would like to warmly welcome all of you to the conference Internet 2013, Shaping Policies to Advance Media Freedom, organized by the OSCE representative on freedom of the media, Ms. Dunia Mijatovic, and her office. I am pleased to note that this conference attracted attention of a large number of representatives from governments, media, academia, civil society, as well as legislators and policymakers. This conference, in our review, offers an excellent opportunity to explore key issues related to Internet freedom. The conference includes panel discussions on many relevant topics, ranging from freedom of expression and hate speech to the future of copyright online and liability for comments on news sites. Free, independent, and pluralistic media are essential for a democratic society. In the 1975 Helsinki Final Act, the participating states recognized that the free flow of information was critical to improving relations among the states. Since the Helsinki Final Act, the media landscape has changed dramatically. The Internet and other network technologies have offered people all over the world a new platform for exercising their right to freedom of opinion and expression. It has become an indispensable tool for all citizens to seek, receive, and impart information. A major challenge of our time is safeguarding and fostering media pluralism. The Internet, as the first truly global medium, embodies the commitment to free media. In our view, to ensure a sustainable, people-centered, and rights-based approach to the Internet, it is necessary to affirm the principles of Internet governance. The Internet governance must ensure the protection of all fundamental rights and freedoms and affirm their universality, indivisibility, interdependence, and interrelation in accordance with international human rights law. The Internet should remain an open, global, and public forum for freedom of opinion and expression, and a platform for facilitating the exercise of other human rights and fundamental freedoms. At the same time, there is a need to tackle challenges as legitimate concerns stem from the availability of terrorist propaganda, racist and sexually explicit content, as well as content defined as hate speech and others. Efficient implementation of OSCE commitments in the area of media freedom remains an integral part of the OSCE concept of comprehensive security. As underlined by the OSCE chairperson in office, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Mr. Leonid Kazara, observance of commitments by all participating states on human rights, democracy, and the rule of law will be at the top of the Ukrainian chairmanship's agenda. The Ukrainian chairmanship has identified media freedom as one of its priorities for 2013, and we have proposed to hold a special event on this important topic. Dear participants, we are here today not only to exchange views about the Internet, a constantly evolving technology that has opened new worlds of communications to us. The aim of the conference is to move towards a clear understanding of existing OSCE commitments regarding the rights of freedom of expression and freedom of the media, and their application to the Internet and other connective technologies. We are convinced that commitments to free media and the free flow of information first addressed in the Helsinki Final Act remain pertinent in today's world. The future of free media is inexorably linked to a free internet. Access to digital networks and internet must be fostered. The right to disseminate and to receive information is a basic human right. It is highly important to safeguard that regardless of what technical means are used to seek and impart information, the basic constitutional value of the freedom of the media would not be questioned. I wish all of the participants of the conference a stimulating and practical discussion and look forward to the recommendations that will be developed in your debates at this conference. Once again, I welcome all of you in Vienna at this important event. Thank you. Thank you, Dina.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Prokopchuk. With this, I would like to hand over to Secretary General Lamberto Zanier for his thoughts in relation to the topic.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, dear colleagues, I'm delighted to join Dunja Mijatovic and Ambassador Prokopchuk in welcoming you here at the Hofburg today at the opening of the Internet 2013 conference organized by the Office of the OSCE Representative on Freedom of the Media. I'm very happy to see such a diverse group of participants, from ambassadors and delegates of OSCE participating states to representatives from national delegations, governments and authorities, media, academia, civil society, the blogosphere, and even the industry. The impressive number of speakers and participants, more than 350 altogether, demonstrates the high relevance of this event. And of course, the participants of this conference extend beyond those of us physically in the room. There is live video streaming online and remote participation as well. While the internet allows for easy online communication, for video messages, tweets, Facebook chats, or Google message exchange, this conference highlights the unique experience and strength of coupling this with meeting in person, putting faces to email addresses, and deepening and building networks over the occasional cup of coffee. The subtitle of the conference, Shaping Policies to Advance Media Freedom, sets the tone for this conference. When it comes to the internet, there is no textbook solution for regulation or legislation. There is no historical precedent for governing a global infrastructure such as the internet. The fundamental human rights which the participating states recommitted to at the Astana Summit in 2010, the right to free expression and free media, the freedom of assembly and freedom of religious belief, are as applicable in an online world, an area that plays an increasingly important in our daily lives and in how we both distribute and receive information. Following the OSCE Ministerial Council in Sofia in 2004, the Permanent Council decided that participating states should take action to ensure that the Internet remains an open and public forum for freedom of opinion and expression, as enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and to foster access to Internet both in homes and schools. Developing guidelines for OSCE participating states on how to guarantee media freedom online is a process in the making. I encourage all of you here today to use this unique opportunity and contribute to the discussions over the next 2 days. The OSCE is a front runner in addressing issues and providing a platform for discussions relating to the Internet and free expression. The first Amsterdam Internet conferences were organized a decade ago by previous representatives Freimut Duve and Miklos Arasti. This topic can be viewed from a number of perspectives and requires a multi-layered approach. The representative works closely with the wider OSCE family in tackling these issues. The Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, the ODIHR, is working on tolerance and non-discrimination online and the right to freedom of assembly on the Internet. The Office of the High Commissioner on National Minorities is looking into online minority media, while the Secretariat, through its Department on Transnational Threats, is looking at ways to enhance cybersecurity. At the basis of the OSCE's comprehensive approach to security is the understanding that security challenges and human rights, including media freedom, freedom of expression, and access to information, are interdependent, intertwined, and interrelated. freedom of expression and media are key principles for fostering a meaningful debate on security issues and can help us effectively address new challenges. These new challenges come in many guises, and the OSCE also continues to work on cybersecurity, including through an informal working group tasked with developing confidence-building measures to reduce the risk of conflict stemming from the use of information and communication technologies. Last year in June, in a regular report to the OSCE Permanent Council, the representative highlighted internet freedom and journalist safety as major concerns for freedom of the media today. As Mrs. Mijatovic said back then, there is little doubt that the technological revolution that gave rise to the internet is far from over, nor is the debate on its effect on mankind. And I couldn't agree more. In June 2012, the Irish chairmanship hosted a conference organized by the Office of the Representative on Freedom of the Media on the challenges to freedom of expression, media freedom online, and the debate over internet governance. Then, as today, by bringing together diverse groups, the OSCE has been able to inform, to stimulate discussion, and ultimately to guide OSCE participating states and other key stakeholders to make informed choices in order to keep the internet whole and free. Given the new environment in which we work today, legislation and regulation must stay abreast of technical innovations. I'm confident that the recommendations at the closing of this conference tomorrow will provide guidelines that are applicable today, but which will likely need to be adjusted in the future. This conference is an important step to guarantee the promise of a free internet. I can promise that the OSCE will continue to address current and emerging challenges and work to fulfill our commitments in this area, both online as well as offline. I wish you all interesting discussions, good conversation, and a successful conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. Now I would like to say a few words before I give floor to our keynote speakers. We can start by saying that discussion on freedom of expression and freedom of the media on the internet has become more and more complex throughout the last decade, and the media landscape is changing rapidly. New policies are needed to meet new challenges and to ensure that new technology does not impact the individual's right of freedom of expression and access to information. As mentioned before, a decade ago, my predecessors, as representatives on freedom of the media, convened a series of internet conferences in Amsterdam to establish the potential and challenges of the internet for free expression and free media. The Amsterdam recommendations of 2003 and the Media Freedom Internet Cookbook of 2004 approach the internet as a new phenomenon, as a unique means to share information. In 2012, the Irish OSCE chairmanship took another timely initiative with the Dublin Conference on Internet Freedom to nurture the dialogue about online freedoms and to initiate discussion among the 57 OSCE participating states. When the internet was created decades ago, one thing was unavoidable: the issue over how or whether to control it and who should have this power. Battle lines have been drawn between different regimes, democracies, corporations, customers, hackers, and law enforcement. Their main point of agreement is that the internet has changed the world forever in ways we are only beginning to understand. We all have to admit, all of us, that we are all still tapping in a dark, or maybe it's much better to say that we are in some kind of gray zone when it comes to shaping policies on internet. And that is a good starting point of agreement, but it's hardly to be enough. On the other side, points of disagreements are much greater. Privacy, piracy, security, sovereignty, and the divisions on these issues reflect an even deeper split between those who want tight control and those who want freedom. The internet is nowadays approaching a state of crisis on different fronts. The first one is sovereignty. By definition, a boundaryless system challenges geography and challenges the power of nation states. The second is piracy and intellectual property. information wants to be free, but right holders, they want to be paid and protected. The third is privacy. Online anonymity allows for creativity and political dissent, but it also gives cover to disruptive and criminal behavior. The fourth is security, the one which is extremely relevant for the OSCE. Free access to open internet makes users vulnerable to various kinds of hacking, threats, including corporate and government espionage, personal surveillance, child abuse, trafficking, etc. And nobody, at least not my office, is challenging the rights of the governments to nationally and internationally protect citizens and societies from all threats, but not at the expense of freedom of expression. The question I have for us today is, where are we standing when it comes to freedom of expression and freedom of the media online within the OSCE region? Not an easy task and not an easy answer. However, wearing my RFOM hat, I would like, among other topics, to focus on one very important challenge, the freedom of expression and freedom of the media online. Safety and at the same time protection of our basic human right to freely express ourselves offline but also online. This issue is fundamental and it is cross-cutting. Over the next 2 days, we will try to tackle the most relevant issues pertaining to freedom of expression and freedom of the media on and over the internet. And while we are trying to apply a comprehensive approach to get views from the opposing angles and to get as many voices heard as possible, we have to be clear that there are still issues which we had to leave out due to constraints in time and space. And we can only hope the discussion will continue. But apart from discussion, we also need some results. For the first time, we have an information crossing borders without any rules having been designed for it, as was the way with transfrontier television and radio. Sometimes we forget about these other technologies. For the first time, information is truly global. While the technologies are, and the new principle remains the same, freedom of expression must have the same protection online as offline. As the UN Human Rights Council declared in its landmark resolution last year, and at least all the countries sitting here signed it. How we can ensure that this one of the key challenges facing all of us, lawmakers, activists, journalists, bloggers, ordinary citizens today. The debate on regulation and who should decide has grabbed headlines in recent months. Controversial attempts to update the ITU regulations at a meeting in Dubai in December last year ended without consensus. However, the discussion about expanding the role of governments in regulating the internet is far from over. That does not mean that there are not more blatant attempts to silence critical voices online as well. In my role as the OSCE Media Freedom Representatives for a 57-country organization, I have expressed my concerns on several occasions. There is almost not a week where I do not have to raise my voice in order to raise the issues of imprisoned journalists, bloggers, as well as about attempts to introduce excessive national legislation that will enable authorities to censor journalists and clamp down on press freedom. January 18th was the anniversary of the protest that actually had 7 million people signing an online petition to stop SOPA and PIPA, an impressive mobilization of citizens over legislation that would otherwise remain highly problematic. That action was followed in Europe by widespread protest against ACTA. All these issues were raised by my office. Threats to internet freedom come from all sides. They could take the form of direct attempts to silence independent voices and assert government control, or they could simply be collateral damage of badly thought out regulations. What we need to do is balance enforcement with rights. Protecting children or curbing the spread of hateful speech that can incite extremism and possibly terrorist acts are worthwhile goals. But de facto censorship through legislation to block and filter is not a solution. What is needed is an open discussion involving governments, business, civil society, including media and experts. That's why I decided that we hear something that in a way we are missing, not only in this organization, but in many other international organizations, the views from academia, the views from people that are actually teaching new generations. There are many forms this transparent and open discussion on the future of the internet governance can take. I think it is also important to point out the internet freedom advocates that it is not enough to say hands off the internet. There is much more they need to do. What cannot be emphasized enough is that how these issues are resolved is not just of interest to netizens or special interests. It is not an academic question, as anyone who is involved in fighting for media freedom in the world can tell you. There are real-world consequences. Bloggers are jailed. Journalists receive death threats. People in many parts of the world are effectively cut off from sources of information due to government blocking or because they live on the wrong side of the digital divide. This is our reality. But it remains true that in our globalized world, where education, information, personal development, advancement and interaction, and participation in political decision-making are to a great extent realized through the internet, the right to access the web becomes a cornerstone for the fundamental right to freedom of expression. The right to seek, receive, and impart information not only includes the right to access, but presupposes it. Without the free expression of ideas and the publication thereof in the media, including, of course, and through the internet, no single society will develop and advance effectively, be it in the political, social, economic, but also in the artistic and cultural sense. Nevertheless, we do not always appreciate the existence of these freedoms. Too often, particularly in established democracies, we take them for granted and only value their importance when they are tempered with the state interference and control. Too often, it is the case that we only know how crucial these rights are and how determined we must fight for them once we are deprived of them. The challenge is to jointly identify areas that benefit from no or self-regulation, and on the other hand, effective approaches for addressing other issues. At the same time, I'm of the opinion that too often, too many governments perceive the internet as this other world, a dark world, uncontrollable force, which needs to be tamed or even silenced. The internet is first and foremost a technology, a platform, a tool, and a forum. We need to see how to best use it, how to preserve this one internet that we have, how to ensure it remains free, safe, and global. It has become a cliché within the industry that you should not really fix your eyes on the rear view mirror if you are driving into the future. This is a legitimate caution, particularly in the area like communications. Regulatory changes and public policy can fundamentally change the political and economic rationality of ways of development. The future will bring exciting, challenging changes as electronic communication reaches even deeper into everyday life. A more productive and safer society is possible. However, things could also go wrong. The next wave of technological change will be accompanied by not just tremendous new opportunities, but will also create tremendous anxieties, fears, concerns, and dilemmas related to both content and technology. The struggle to protect free expression has always been led by activists, but it must also involve the broader civil society, the private sector, academia, and the government. It's always a struggle of competing interests and tensions, but in the end, if free expression is protected, so is democracy and open society. Fighting for the right to speak freely, openly, and without fear must remain or become the priority for governments. Not just offline, but also online. Not just for so-called new or emerging democracies, but also for the old and established democracies. It is my sincere wish that this conference will inform stimulate discussion, and also propose solid recommendations coming from my office on how new policies can be shaped in order to meet new challenges freedom of expression and media freedom online face in a digital era in the 21st century. With this in mind, I would like to invite our keynote speakers to offer their views. I will start with Professor Dawn Nunziato from George Washington University, a dear friend and a person who dedicated a lot of her time working with students, working with international organizations, writing about the importance of internet freedom, and really by teaching at the same time fighting for the right cause, at least in my view, and in the view of her students. And with this, I would like to give the floor to you, Dawn, and welcome to Vienna.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dunya, and everyone in your office for inviting me here. It's a great honor to be here with you today. So today I want to speak, this morning I want to speak to you about digital due process in protecting internet speech, and in particular about the convergence that we are seeing among international principles for digital due process for protecting internet speech. So there are a number of issues that I could talk about, and there are a number of issues that we will talk about today over the next, today and tomorrow. And we can look at the issues set forth in the OSCE's 2011 report on freedom of expression on the internet, prepared by Professor Akdeniz. He identifies 4 different issues that are important for internet freedom of expression: internet access, including issues of net neutrality. I've written a book on net neutrality, and the United States is struggling with issues of net neutrality right now. Internet content regulation, blocking, filtering, and content removal, licensing and intermediary liability issues, all very important issues for internet freedom of expression. I'm going to focus on the second and the third in my brief remarks today: internet content regulation and blocking, filtering, and content removal, because it's here that I think we are seeing international convergence on principles of digital due process, if you will, for protecting internet speech. So, not surprising that we see substantial divergence regarding substantive free speech protections among the OSCE participating states. But we're also seeing a growing convergence regarding due process, regarding the procedures for protecting internet speech under the ICCPR, under European Court of Human Rights decisions, and especially a recent decision, Yildirim v. Turkey, which just came out in December, and under United States First Amendment law, which is historically and still is very strong in protecting freedom of expression. So the divergence we're all familiar with. OSCE participating states have different definitions of illegal content based on different cultural, moral, religious, historical differences and values. And that's understandable and to be expected. We have different definitions of illegal speech, right? And some of these categories of illegal speech, to my mind, present some serious difficulties and some serious problems for freedom of expression. But these are substantive categories of freedom of expression, and I'm not going to talk about them today. Instead, I'm going to talk about procedural protections for speech. As I say, I think we are seeing convergence, and this is to be commended, convergence on the processes for protecting internet speech under the ICCPR, under the European Convention of Human Rights, and under United States free speech jurisprudence. That's my little picture of the convergence that I think we're seeing. So some of these principles include strict procedural safeguards and sensitive tools that must be used for distinguishing between protected speech and unprotected speech, illegal speech, both online and offline. So the idea in a nutshell is that if you're going to distinguish between legal speech and illegal speech, you're required to use a scalpel and not a sledgehammer in distinguishing between what is legal and what is illegal. And I'll talk about some of those important procedures and sensitive tools for drawing those lines. And I'm not a proceduralist myself by the courses that I teach, but more and more I think that these procedures, these processes for protecting freedom of expression are very important. And a couple of quotes for us to consider from United States Supreme Court Justice Felix Frankfurter: "The history of freedom is in no small part the history of procedure." Another quote from a constitutional law professor: "Procedural guarantees play an equally large role in protecting freedom of speech. Indeed, they assume an importance fully as great as the substantive rule of law to be applied." So with that in mind, I want to focus more on those procedures. So I teach First Amendment law, and I could spend a lot of time talking about the United States law of prior restraints. I won't, but just very briefly, prior restraints are restrictions on speech that occur before or without a judicial determination of the speech's illegality. Under United States law, they are greatly disfavored and they are very strictly scrutinized. Important for our purposes, internet filtering, when the software makes the decision about what speech is legal and what is illegal, internet filtering and many internet removal and blocking determinations embody prior restraints. They embody restrictions on speech that occur without a judicial determination of the speech's illegality. If we look, for example, at Google's transparency report, we see that a number of requests are made to Google without a judicial determination requesting the blocking or the removal of particular content. So just an example for us of the requests that are made. Now, Google doesn't follow all of these requests, but a number of requests made for removing or blocking internet content outside of the context of a judicial determination. Under United States First Amendment law, prior restraint law in particular, strict procedural safeguards must be in place before any such prior restraint can be upheld. We are also seeing, as I mentioned, convergence regarding digital due process for protecting internet speech, not just from First Amendment law, but also under the ICCPR and under European Court of Human Rights decisions. And so here are some of the procedures that we're seeing agreement on for protecting freedom of speech. If any internet speech is to be restricted, transparency, notice, and foreseeability must be are requirements for such restrictions. So affected internet users, both the content provider and the end user who's trying to access that material, must be given notice of those decisions. So no secret filtering or blocking. If the government wants to filter or block such speech, these principles require that they do so in a manner that is transparent, that gives notice to the affected internet users, and in such a way that it's foreseeable what the scope of the restriction is going to be. So authorities must be clear and transparent about what speech they're blocking under these principles. Another area of convergence that we're seeing regarding digital due process for protecting internet speech is a requirement of precision in speech regulations, so that the speech to be regulated must be precisely defined, not vaguely, not broadly, restricting issues that cause national disharmony or that affect national interests. But if the speech is going to be illegal, the definition must be precise and narrowly defined. Under US law, we talk about it being narrowly tailored if there's to be a content restriction. The regulation must be applied in a targeted manner to avoid collateral censorship and overbreadth, and must be the least restrictive means of accomplishing the state's goal. So precision and targeting and tailoring of any speech restrictions. We're also seeing convergence on the requirement that any decision to block or filter or restrict speech must be appealable, must secure meaningful judicial review for the affected parties. So affected internet users must be provided with a meaningful ability to appeal the decision to block or filter speech to a judicial body, right? So notice is required to give them the means and the ability to appeal an adverse decision so that they can secure a judicial determination of the speech's illegality. So we see also that decisions to restrict speech must be necessary and supported by compelling government interests. This is another area of convergence regarding digital due process for protecting internet speech. So in summary, we see that sensitive tools, the scalpel, not the sledgehammer, must be used. Strict procedural safeguards must be in place for distinguishing between protected speech and unprotected speech, both offline and for our purposes online. So these are the principles: transparency, notice, foreseeability, precision, appealability, and judicial review of any such decision. The speech restriction itself must be necessary and supported by compelling government interests. And note that I'm not talking about the substance. Even though those issues are very important, I'm not talking about the substantive laws themselves. I'm talking about the procedures that are used to distinguish between protected and unprotected speech. And I think that in some sense that the substance can follow the procedure, that these procedural determinations and procedural requirements can make a lot of difference in the amount of speech that is being restricted. We've also seen convergence from the report of the UN Special Rapporteur on the Promotion and Protection of the Right of Freedom of Opinion and Expression, Frank LaRue, in his 2011 report, Construing the ICCPR. He outlines these same types of procedural principles for distinguishing between protected speech and unprotected speech, right? Principles of predictability, principles of transparency, legitimacy, necessity, and proportionality, and the requirement that there be adequate safeguards against abuse of such speech regulations, including the possibility of challenge, judicial challenge to an administrative, to a judicial body for remedies against the abusive application of such laws. We are also seeing the European Court of Human Rights case law applying and articulating these same sorts of procedural protections for freedom of expression. So this chamber judgment in Yildirim v. Turkey, which came down just a couple of months ago. In this case, you may be familiar with it, a national of Turkey, Mr. Ahmet Yildirim, sued the Republic of Turkey for violating his rights under Article 10 of the European Convention on Human Rights. In this case, back in 2009, the Denizli Criminal Court ordered the blocking of one Google site that was accused of insulting the memory of Ataturk. Now that in and of itself, procedurally, is not so bad, right? Because we have a court that is looking at a particular site and making a determination that that violates the country's laws. Not speaking to the substance of those laws, but to the procedure that was followed there. There was a judicial determination that one particular website had illegal content under Turkey's laws. The telecommunications directorate, the TIB in Turkey, was charged with executing this order. They asked the court, they went back to the court and asked the court to order the blocking of all Google sites, which, not surprisingly, would have a substantially overbroad effect. Not just this one site that was accused of having illegal content, but the TIB asked the court to order the blocking of all Google sites. The Denizli Criminal Court complied and issued that order. After that order was issued, Mr. Yildirim, who published his academic works and opinions using Google sites, was no longer able to access his materials, nor was anyone else able to access his materials. After the order, his Google site was blocked and remained blocked even after the criminal proceedings in the original case were dropped. The European Court of Human Rights found a violation of Article 10, which guarantees the right of freedom of expression. And in this decision, the court articulated some of these same sorts of procedural protections that we've been discussing, emphasized the great danger that prior restraints pose, articulated the particularly strict legal framework that must be in place before any such restrictions can be legal. So my time is running short, so I'm going to skip over some of these slides and focus on additional procedural principles that must be in place to protect freedom of expression online. First, to confine the reach of internet speech restrictions to avoid geographical spillover, right? You may be familiar with the Yahoo France case, in which France has laws that prohibit the Yahoo's hosting of the auction of Nazi memorabilia, and applied those laws to Yahoo.com, a California company. Yahoo, even though that material is legal within the United States, Yahoo ultimately removed that material from Yahoo.com. This is an example of regulatory spillover, and an important principle for protecting freedom of expression online is for states to impose their speech restrictions only on their own citizens and avoid that sort of extraterritorial regulatory spillover. Finally, an important procedural principle for countries to follow is to not hide behind voluntary nationwide filtering schemes. So we have in a number of countries private entities that are imposing voluntary nationwide ISP filtering regimes. The UK's use with British Telecom of Clean Feed, which is also used by other countries, is virtually a nationwide ISP top-down filtering regime, which suffers from an accountability gap and a transparency gap, right? Because the state itself is not technically behind such restrictions, and so the state cannot be held to the strictures of digital due process for protecting free speech that I've been outlining. So another procedural principle that should be followed. Finally, in sum, while we see substantial divergence regarding all of our country's substantive free speech protections, we do see a growing convergence regarding meaningful due process procedures for protecting internet speech. And we're seeing this under the ICCPR, under the European Court of Human Rights, under First Amendment law, and I commend these developments. I'm very pleased to see this convergence among these important procedural protections for protecting internet free speech, because the history of freedom is the history of procedure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dawn. I think you already raised several extremely important issues that we will start debating quite soon. With your ending, I would like to hand over to another friend of our office, distinguished Professor Jaroslav Skvartsov from the International Journalism Faculty from Moscow, who will also give his thoughts in this topic. And Professor Skvartsov will speak in Russian, so please get ready with your headphones in order to listen to our next keynote speaker. Professor Skvartsov, please, the floor is yours.
Большое спасибо. Уважаемые коллеги, в самом начале я хотел бы сказать буквально два слова вот о чем. Мы говорим с вами об интернете как о части нашей жизни, части нашей профессии, части нашей жизни повседневной. Я каждый день общаюсь со студентами, с молодыми людьми. Для них интернет постепенно становится не частью, а, собственно, жизнью. Это интернет-поколение, которое живет в интернет-среде. И мне бы очень хотелось, чтобы в рамках наших дискуссий мы не забывали о том, что буквально через 5, может быть, максимум 10 лет, та самая активная треть населения Земли, это будет поколение людей, выросших в условиях интернета. Интернет во многом их воспитал. Теперь, собственно, хочу перейти к тем тезисам, которыми хотел с вами поделиться. Тема, которая послужила информационным поводом для нашей сегодняшней встречи, она настолько широка и многогранна, что мне хотелось бы сразу обозначить ряд ключевых тезисов, обмен мнений по которым, как мне представляется, был бы и интересен, и полезным всем собравшимся. От чего или от кого должен быть свободен интернет? От цензуры? От контроля со стороны власти? Ну, такая свобода зафиксирована в основных документах, пожалуй, всех цивилизованных стран. Ну и в международных документах тоже. От ограничений как таковых, возрастных, политических, культурных, цивилизационных. Что мы понимаем под свободой слова в интернете? Свободой интернет-среды и как сами среду эту определяем? Извечный вопрос. А судьи кто? Кто вправе ранжировать степень свободы и несвободы интернет-пространства? Органы власти, профессиональные участники рынка? В чем свобода писателя, того же блогера, и свобода читателя? Должен ли читатель, пользователь интернет-источниками, быть от информации защищенным? Я веду речь, конечно же, об информации вредоносной, опасной, провоцирующей человека на некорректные или неадекватные действия. И если да, то кто должен взять на себя эту роль защитника? Не попирает ли защитник права интернета, право быть информационно свободным? Где те критерии, где критерии четкой установки этих границ, например, грани между экстремистскими и неэкстремистскими ресурсами, разжиганием межнациональной розни и просто разбором той или иной геополитической ситуации с учетом национальной специфики местного населения? Где нужны жесткие рамки, а где следует положиться на здравый смысл? Приведу такой пример. Программа «Антиплагиат» широко используется в высшей школе. Эта программа позволяет автоматически выявить объем чужих мыслей в рефератах или дипломных работах студентов. Но только сам преподаватель может понять, где речь идет о скрытом цитировании, по существу воровстве чужих мыслей, выдаваемых за собственные, то есть о плагиате, а где о корректном цитировании студентам научных трудов других авторов. Иными словами, видимая простота, быстрота, легкость отнюдь не обеспечивают качество поиска и отбора. Еще одна важная тема – журналисты и блогеры. Профессиональные участники информационных и коммуникационных процессов и, скажем так, любители. Всегда ли мы можем ставить знак равенства между двумя этими категориями, двумя этими понятиями? Какова свобода блогера и журналиста? Больше ли свобода у блогера по сравнению с журналистом? Кто из них более свободен и кто более ответственен, более компетентен, более искренен перед своими читателями? И еще такой нюанс. Журналист как автор собственных колонок, материалов в своем издании, и он же, этот же журналист, как автор собственного блога, это одно и то же интернет-лицо? Или возможности для самовыражения в первом и втором случае существенно разнятся? Пожалуй, здесь я мог бы уже предложить уважаемой аудитории не только вопросы, но и варианты ответов на них. Как мне представляется, с большой долей условности мы можем говорить о так называемой блогерской журналистике. Почему условность? Почему условно? Потому что это журналистика мнений, но не журналистика фактов. Представители, скажем так, традиционных медиа придерживаются определенных правил, форматов. Ну и, я надеюсь, не забывают о профессиональной этике. Они опираются не только и не столько на собственное видение и ощущения, сколько на факты. И их мнения, комментарии, их суждения подкрепляющие. В случае нарушения журналистом кодекса поведения читатель вправе защитить свою позицию, свое доброе имя, свои права, потребовать опровержения ложной, несоответствующей действительности информации, в том числе и в судебном порядке. Это первое отличие. В отношении так называемых свободных журналистов, блогеров, использовать подобную практику, естественно, проблематично. Второе отличие. Пока новые медиа пробуют себя в роли СМИ, в роли масс-медиа, традиционные масс-медиа превращаются в средства сертификации массовой информации. Интернет, наравне с другими источниками информации, другими производителями новостей, формирует информационные потоки, как бы предлагая художнику краски. А уже задача художника, то есть журналиста, полученную информацию отобрать, сертифицировать и написать этими красками событийную картину дня. Интерес к интернету не только как пропагандисту, агитатору, но и как организатору растет, причем неуклонно растет во всем мире. Отсюда скрытое или плохо скрываемое стремление власти и просто сильных мира сего, скажем, крупных корпораций, крупного бизнеса, едва ли не по всему миру к регулированию интернет-пространства. Означает ли такое стремление к регулированию посягательство на свободу интернета? Или же речь идет просто об установлении неких административных и правовых рамок, фильтров, о чем мы сегодня уже говорили, общих правил игры? Итак, ограничение прав и свобод или, напротив, гарантия прав и свобод, и прежде всего право быть информационно защищенным? Ну, если еще десяток лет назад такой вопрос вряд ли был бы актуален, сейчас с распространением интернета и с глубиной его проникновения в нашу жизнь не задумываться об этом попросту преступно. Выше я уже упоминал о плагиате. Авторское право и вопросы его защиты в интернете – это один из ключевых аспектов большой темы свободы интернета. И, как мне представляется, неверно было бы утверждать, что проблема эта не решается вовсе. Важные подвижки здесь, безусловно, есть, но жизнь, как известно, она постоянно задает новые задачи, новые головоломки. При этом конца тенденции этой не видно. Интернет поглощает все новые сферы жизни и все плотнее входит в нашу повседневность. А доступность информации в сети дает возможность недобросовестным пользователям для манипуляции. Вероятность, возможность того, что в случае угрозы, информационной угрозы, вам или вашим близким никто не сможет помочь, никто не сможет вас защитить, исключительно велика. Приведу такой пример. Где-то лет 15 назад в одной редакции раздался звонок. Звонивший поинтересовался у журналистки, действительно ли она готовит некий разоблачающий материал, и получил от нее положительный ответ. Тогда звонивший попросил статью эту из номера снять. Она сказала, что делать этого не станет. Это ее принципиальная позиция. Тогда звонивший спросил: простите, а ваша дочь, и звонивший назвал ее по имени, она ходит в школу по такому-то адресу? И точно назвал адрес школы. А по вторникам и пятницам она посещает музыкальную школу по такому-то адресу? И снова точно назвал адрес. Спасибо. Звонивший положил трубку, и журналистка поднялась к главному редактору и рассказала ему о разговоре, который у нее только что состоялся. Журналист и редактор взвесили все за и против, то есть публиковать материалы, обеспечить журналистским членам ее семьи защиту или же просто снять заметку. В редакции решили заметку не публиковать. Я хочу заметить, что прямой угрозы в словах звонившего в редакцию не содержалось. Так вот, к чему я привел этот пример. Совсем недавно я услышал другую историю, уже свежую. Владелец небольшого пакета акций одной компании постоянно отклонял навязчивые предложения продать свои акции. И вот однажды на стол переговоров были выложены несколько фотографий. Мужчины, женщины, несколько пожилых людей. Просто их положили перед ним. После этого несговорчивый до той минуты акционер побледнел и спросил, что я должен сделать. Ему сказали всего-навсего продать свои акции по предлагаемой цене. Он сказал, я согласен. Я думаю, что вы догадались, что фотографии родственников этого уже бывшего на тот момент акционера взяли просто из одной из социальных сетей, где он их сам выложил. Зачастую получается так, что мы, являясь активными пользователями интернета, не понимаем о том, что мы сами ограничиваем свою собственную свободу, причем не только информационную. Исходя из этих и других предпосылок, вот в моей стране сейчас с новой силой заговорили о необходимости принятия специального закона об интернете. Параллельно с регулированием рынка активно попытки эти предпринимаются и на уровне профессионального интернет-сообщества. У нас есть такая Лига безопасного интернета, которая создает свои черные списки интернета, открывает доступ к так называемому чистому интернету. Вот, к слову, сейчас Лига безопасного интернета выделила 500 тысяч адресов, которые она относит к категории чистых, безопасных. И ожидается, что при дальнейшем таком отборе, анализе их число вырастет до 1 миллиона. Но что интересно, как посчитали журналисты газеты «Коммерсант», 1 миллион – это всего лишь 1% от общего числа доступных интернет-сайтов. Мы с вами прекрасно понимаем, что абсолютной свободы ни в интернете, ни в жизни не существует. Мне в этой связи очень нравится определение того, что такое культура. Культура – это система самоограничений. И вопрос, с моей точки зрения, заключается в том, насколько ответственно пользователи интернета распоряжаются свободой сети и ее доступностью. Опять же, как и в реальной жизни, в некоторых случаях достаточно придерживаться некоторых согласованных правил, кодекса поведения или просто неписанных джентльменских соглашений, а в других вполне оправдано принятие соответствующих законов как на национальном, так и на международном уровне. Пользуясь случаем, хочу сказать, что сфера деятельности Бюро ОБСЕ по вопросам свободы СМИ охватывает очень широкий круг вопросов, причем с развитием новых телекоммуникационных технологий появляются и новые сферы деятельности, актуальными становятся новые задачи. И по сравнению с тем моментом, когда с той ситуацией, которая была, скажем, 15 лет назад, когда работа в этом направлении только начиналась, с тех пор ситуация стремительно, можно даже сказать, драматично изменилась. И наверняка разумно было бы подумать над тем, чтобы установки, стоявшие на заре движения, были бы пересмотрены и актуализированы. И еще хочу сказать о том, что в настоящее время вопросами, связанными с функционированием интернета, занимается множество организаций, как на региональном уровне, так и в системе Организации Объединенных Наций. И, наверное, вы согласитесь со мной, что тесное сотрудничество и их взаимодополняемость наряду с участием в этих процессах представителей государственной власти, гражданского общества, академических кругов и, разумеется, бизнеса является, вероятно, тем самым алгоритмом выработки верных решений, которые сами интернет-пользователи называют multi-stakeholderism. Благодарю вас за внимание. В заключение хочу вспомнить один такой журналистский анекдот, который рассказывали на одном тренинге BBC, тоже, наверное, уже лет 10-15 назад. Если ваша мама сообщила вам через интернет, что она вас любит, лучше перезвоните и перепроверьте эту информацию. Я все время говорю своим студентам, что, конечно же, интернет – это колоссальное благо, но журналисты, сейчас я подчеркиваю, говорю именно о профессиональных медийщиках, должны вот об этой то ли шутке, то ли не шутке, озвученной BBC, не должны о ней забывать. Большое спасибо за внимание. Спасибо.
Спасибо, Professor Skvartsov. As you can already see, we have different views, different challenges, also coming from academia. But this is what we actually want to hear and we wish to see within the OSCE. A discussion, a dialogue that could lead us to something more progressive, that could lead us to something that all of us would like to see in order to have open, safe, and global internet. But it's not going to be an easy task. We also have to be very realistic. Much more needs to be done in order to bring different views and maybe different concerns to the table, but at the same time without not one moment forgetting about the importance of free expression and free speech. With this in mind, we would move slowly outside this wonderful room and leave you to start with the Permanent Council. We are honored to have the opportunity, all of us, to start our conference here in this very important room. I have several logistical issues that I would like to share with you. Before I move to this logistical part, let me now first and all thank all the donors that generously contributed to this conference and with their financial support made this event possible. Let me thank the governments of Austria, the Czech Republic, France, Ireland, the Netherlands, Norway, the United Kingdom, and the United States. But also to all of you for making it possible for all these people sitting in this room to travel from around the OSCE region in order to meet and discuss. It was also by the contribution of the Czech Republic that we could realize the publication, the 2013 Social Media Guidebook, which I'm proud to launch today along with another publication by my office, the Internet Media Self-Regulation Guidebook. Both are coming fresh from the printing houses, and I would like to thank very much my staff, Christian Möller, who supervised the Social Media Guidebook, and Adeline Holland, the person and force behind the Self-Regulation Guidebook. There are also many people that contributed to these books that are present at the conference, and both Adeline and Christian will be available during the coffee break to hand out these publications and answer any questions you might have. Now to logistical part. After this opening session, we will break for coffee. Coffee will be served in the cafeteria on this floor. Split sessions will start on time at 11 in different rooms as indicated on the agenda in your folder. Please follow the signs and do not hesitate to direct your questions to the staff of my office. You can find their contact details also in the folder and identify them by the blue badges that they are all wearing. Internet access. There is a Wi-Fi access here in the Hofburg. I also have to inform you that we might have some limitations in bandwidth. It seems that at the time Austrian emperors built this magnificent building, they were not thinking about World Wide Web. Well, I think we will deal with this. There will be a video streaming of the session, and there also will be a remote participation. The official OSCE Twitter account is @OSCE. We invite you to use the hashtag Internet 2013 for all conference-related tweets. Please feel free to get the news out. And talking about hashtag, and again, wearing my hat of the representative on freedom of the media, I would just like to end with a thought, but also a statement on my side. And I would like you all to imagine something that probably all of you sitting in this room were following last year. I would like you to imagine the man in the middle of the vast stadium who pressed the button on a boxy old computer terminal, causing a message to flash across the darkness in front of 1 billion viewers scattered all over the world. This is for everyone, it said. This was Sir Tom Berners-Lee, who helped create the World Wide Web and then surrendered control of it. The act, staged at the center of the extravagant opening ceremony of the London Olympic Games, showed how his invention triggered a digital revolution as important as preceding scenes of industrial and social upheaval. With this in mind, we will go to do some work today. Thank you very much.